thanks to David Kuda from Berlin, who asks something that may be of interest to many others.
How important, he writes, is a CS, computer science, or a STEM, science, technology, and mathematics degree to become a great programmer? I am a self-taught software engineer, and I do feel inferior because I do not have a degree, although I feel capable of achieving a degree. I'm probably older than other students, and I have a family to provide, so going back to full-time study is not really something I want or can afford. But maybe your take would change my priorities.
Well, David, thank you for trusting me so much as to suggest that my opinion might make you rethink yours. Let's dig into it. Welcome to Frank Staiano Explains. I'm a professor in the computing department at the University of Cambridge, so obviously I do believe that computer science education at university level is quite important. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this job. So perhaps you've already guessed what my answer is going to be. But maybe it's not going to be exactly what you thought. A STEM degree is quite formative. The better quality degrees give you a broad base. You study plenty of foundational things, including particularly the mathematical basis of computing that you would never study on your own. Self-taught people tend to want to learn the obvious stuff, like learning to program. And they tend to ignore the unseen foundations, like linear algebra or group theory or logic, and I talked about some of that stuff in another video. That's a bit like wanting big muscles without having a strong skeleton to attach those muscles on. Many people seem to be very eager to get results quickly, and they have little patience for preparatory work. But if you want to build a career as a software developer, it's worth investing your time and effort into building solid foundations for it. Otherwise, you'll always have this nagging feeling that you're missing something in order to do your job well. Of course, anytime you need to do a big job, stripping the wood and sanding it down and filling the cracks and giving it a coat of primer is rather boring compared to the actual painting. But if you skip the preparatory steps, then the paint will start flaking off after a year or two. And it's better to invest in good preparation if you want long-lasting results, especially when we are talking about investing in yourself and your whole career. But while this already sounds like an advertisement for a computer science degree, I must also warn you that a computer science degree will not by itself make you a great programmer. Not even if you graduate with top marks from a great university. It's all very nice, but it's simply not sufficient. But David's question was not whether a degree in computing is sufficient. It was more like if the degree was necessary to become a great programmer. And my answer to that is also, perhaps surprisingly, no. 3 things that are necessary, in my opinion, are: number 1, competence in the fundamentals of computer science, which include not only programming, but the underlying mathematical theory, together with some broad spectrum understanding of all the levels of the stack, from the hardware through machine code, through operating systems, applications, protocols, and user interfaces, and also some broad spectrum understanding of networking, concurrency, security, usability, artificial intelligence, and so forth. I'm not saying you should be an expert in all of those things, but they should not be alien to you if you want to become a great programmer. The number 2, experience of having built large programs that other people have used and that other programmers have also contributed to, and experience of having interacted with great programmers and having learned from them. And number 3, a true passion for programming, the kind of passion that meant if you had another paying job, you would still want to do programming in your spare time at your own expense, just because you enjoy the creativity of programming more than the passive pleasure of just watching TV. And so these 3 things, in my opinion, are necessary for becoming a great programmer. Even these 3 are not sufficient, but they bring you most of the way there. Now, what is the role of the STEM degree in all this? It is not necessary, but it makes it easier for you to achieve number 1, the competence in the foundations of computer science. It does very little towards 2 and 3, and so it is not sufficient. But do not underestimate the value of having a professor who explains the intuition behind what the textbook tells you in a rigorous way. The value of having lectures on specific dates that nudge you to go through the syllabus at a sensible pace. The advantage of having someone competent who can answer your technical questions, and not least, the advantage of being able to discuss the material with other intelligent students and swapping notes with them on how they manage to keep up with everything there is to do. So studying at university gives you all this, and that's why it makes learning easier and more effective than doing it all on your own. Becoming a great programmer is not about imitating or replicating or modeling the traits of a great programmer. So take, for example, the Rubik's Cube. Okay, many kids take pleasure in solving the Rubik's Cube in under a minute. But all they do is learn some recipes that other people came up with. And then they train themselves to execute those recipes very quickly. And I'm not very impressed by this. I'm much more impressed by those few who take the Rubik's Cube, marvel at its ingenuity, and set about discovering for themselves, by themselves, the way to solve it, which is substantially more difficult and immensely more rewarding. That is the difference between being a great programmer versus imitating a great programmer. If you look up how to reverse a list because you've heard it's a common interview question, you want to be prepared for that, you're just imitating a great programmer. If you were a great programmer, or at least if you had the mindset of one, then you would want to figure it out on your own. You would not want anyone to tell you how to do it, because you would crave the intellectual pleasure of figuring it out by yourself. Now, there exist plenty of programmers who do not have a degree. Some of them have a YouTube channel and are happy to dispense advice on how to become successful like them. Now go ahead and enjoy what they have to say, and it's up to you to figure out which ones of them are great programmers that you want to learn from. Now, just be aware that, proud as they are of not having done a degree, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know the mathematical background we were talking about, or why it's of any use to a great programmer. If you are going to be a self-taught programmer, it would be a good idea for you to have a clue on what exactly you need to learn, and why you need to learn that. And I'm not sure that the self-taught programmers can give you that. Not that most students who are on a university course like the one I'm teaching in are reluctant to study some of the subjects. But there's a reason why those topics are being taught to them. So I think a degree makes it easier for you to acquire some basic competence in the field. And even though it may require 3 or 4 years, it saves you time in the long run when you look at it with the perspective of a 40-year career in the field. It's a good investment if you can afford it. It's a good investment if you can do it early on. But it's not the only possible way of doing it. If you are at a stage in your life where going back to school for several years is not a practical option, I understand it. There are always other ways to do it. So if you're serious about it, you can do it some other way. It will be harder than if you had done it at university when you were 18, but it can be done through self-study if you are determined. There's always another way. I hope these thoughts were helpful, or at least made you think. What do you think about this? How did it work for you? What is your story? Tell us in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, stick a like on the video and say Tiger, so I rejoice in seeing that you made it this far. And you might like these other videos about becoming a great programmer.